Spotify recently announced some new tools for artists to market their music, plus some upgrades to the platform. We're going to talk about that today. And we also have some quick marketing hacks for you as well. So it's going to be a fun episode with lots of good info. So let's get to it.
You're listening
to the CD Baby.
CD Baby.
CD Baby.
DIY
Musician
Podcast.
Hey there, and welcome to episode number 334 of the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast. My name is Kevin Bruner, and joining me is Chris Robley. Today, we will be talking about all the new features Spotify has rolled out, plus some marketing hacks, some little marketing nuggets that will help you market your music. So it'll be a fun episode with lots of good stuff. Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, but I want to hear how you're doing because you were just in Kansas City without me.
I know it was hard.
Wanted to be there, but yeah, how was it? Why
it
were
was
you
amazing?
There
Amazing. Chris is referring to the fact that while we were at Folk Alliance back in early February, we got studio time at a studio that you've used there many years in a row, and we recorded some with you. And then we recorded some with Melody Ryan, and it was such an amazing experience. And I've been co-producing Melody's EP with her. And so we were like, the players were amazing. The sounds we were getting were amazing. Let's just go back to Kansas City and use the same people instead of trying to figure out another studio, other players, trying to get the sounds again. And so, yeah, just got back. If I randomly space out or just fall over, it's because I got up at 2:30 this morning to catch a 5:30 a.m. flight. So in Kansas City, which would be like getting up at 12:30 a.m. local time where I'm at. So anyway, amazing trip.
And for anyone listening, I wasn't there, not because Kevin didn't invite me. It wasn't like, oh, the musicians were all great, except Chris. Don't call him back. I'm just busy. My daughter is signed up for like literally every activity that's offered anywhere within a 50-mile radius of my house. So I'm like, job, taxi, etc. But I'm glad it was good. How many songs did you get done?
We tracked 3 songs to finish out the EP, but then we actually tracked another idea with just jamming on some different beats and stuff, which was a lot of fun. And I think one of the hilarious experiences was that just about a block away, the studio is in Shawnee, Kansas, which is like a small town outside of Kansas City. Not very far from the city, but it's definitely its own vibe. And we were a block away from like Main Street, Shawnee, and there's this dive bar called Betty C's. And it was like the dive bar version of Cheers. And so
sounds kind of delightful.
Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing. We ended up being there a whole lot. So Melody got there early, and so she was just trying to find some food near the studio and just ended up there. And it's one of those places where when you walk in, everyone's asking who you are and what your name is, because you're obviously not a regular. And she was telling us, like, you guys got to check this place out. You got to see this place. And so we walk in and sit down, and immediately the people to our left ask our name. And then they said, "Oh, are you the people that are recording at the studio? Everyone's been talking about it."
Because Melody had already been there doing the groundwork.
It was one of those things where these people had no idea there was a recording studio 1 block away from this bar. And it was like literally everybody there knew each other. And every time we showed up, the legend just got bigger and bigger and bigger. We ended up doing a photo shoot there and all sorts of shenanigans. It was just a lot of fun.
Huh.
And they treated us like royalty. It was kind of nice.
That's awesome.
But good people. Yeah. So yeah, amazing experience. The songs are coming together nicely, and we are getting ready to launch her first single. It's coming out April 27th. So if you want to follow along with what we're doing, check out Melody Ryan Music on Instagram or jump on her email list. And yeah, doing some campaign work on that. And Just trying
Are
to
you
fix-
releasing her single worldwide through CD Baby?
We are. We are.
Well, speaking of like advertising plugs, this is going to be a really bad advertisement because I don't know if the deal will be launched yet, but we are partnering. Well, we are partners with Rotor Video,
Yes.
and at some point in April, not sure if it'll be
Yes.
launched exactly when you're hearing this, we're going to have a really great deal for you to create a ton of Spotify canvases for a very affordable rate, and it's good to take advantage of that deal. Because as you'll learn later in our episode, canvases are even more important than they were before. So you're going to want one for like every song you have on Spotify.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to dive into that some on this episode. Yeah. So getting a plug out there early for that.
Well, also, if you're on our email list, be on the lookout for an email. And I think we're going to do some, Instagram posts as well. That'll have the details.
Yeah. So just be watching your email from CD Baby announcing that deal, and it'll be on the CD Baby socials and probably the blog and all that. But it's a great tool. If you haven't used Rotor before, I love it. It makes making music videos so much easier. And obviously, if you have a song to release, you got a song coming up like what Chris and I have been working on some releases with multiple artists. Head on over to cdbaby.com and get your music out there. It's quick and easy and fun, and you'll love it. And yeah. Lastly, I will say before we dive in, if you're not following Chris and I on social media, you should. If you're watching this on YouTube, our handles are on the screen. Chris is at Chris Robley. I'm at K Bruner on Instagram and TikTok. And yeah, check out what we're doing there. And if you hit our links in bio, you might find some cool stuff. Like I've been doing some free 20-minute artist strategy sessions. You can hit my link in bio and schedule something. And so, yeah, you should be following us there. Lots of fun and interesting things that we're diving into. So with all that said, we've got a good episode. There's some new developments on the Spotify front, and there was some quick marketing hacks at the same time that we were coming across. And so we're putting it all together in this episode. So we'll do the marketing hacks first.
Okay.
And then we'll dive into some Spotify details about all the new features they just launched. And then we've got a couple listener emails at the end. So let's get to it, Chris. Let's dive into those marketing hacks.
Yeah. Well, so this one kind of picks up on the Rotor plug we just made. But when you're making your Spotify canvases, whether you're creating them on your own or you're having a service like Rotor do it, make them 7.5 seconds. And why is that?
Oh, you're asking me.
I'm asking you.
I thought it was a rhetorical question. Like, because, and we got this tip from Spotify. When someone shares your song to Instagram stories, it'll play the video twice. So the video can be 3 seconds to 8 seconds. But if you do it 7.5, it'll play it twice in Instagram stories because Instagram stories are 15 seconds long. If you did it 5 seconds long, it would play it 3 times, but that's a pretty short video. 7.5 gives you a little bit more real estate to make something a little bit more visually engaging, that doesn't just feel like something repeating on super, super fast all the time. So yeah, check that out. And you can make Canvas videos in Rotor very easily. They've got a Canvas tool in there, and it makes it easy, gives you options. You can even put text and stuff on screen. I haven't seen that much on Spotify, people using that feature, but you can have some copy on screen on those Canvas videos. So you can experiment. They can be changed out at any time. And it seems like their system updates them pretty quickly, like within a day once you change them out. So yeah, it's something that you can mess around with, and they say it increases engagement.
One thing I was going to say before we move on to the second hack is I think a lot of people have a suspicion about kind of how far they can get with using stock footage. And, they think, well, it won't tell the story I want, or I'll be, kind of at the will of, or at the whim of whatever is available or something like that. But I don't know if you and I are both working with an artist named Katie. Have you seen her sort of stock footagey canvas she made the other day?
I have not yet because I was in the studio
You
and
were in the studio.
I was just heads down on all that stuff.
It was great. I think she used like Shutterstock or some sort of, you purchase the footage and then she made it in Final Cut or something like that. And it totally works for the song. She found good like imagery that matches the topic of the song. And again, it's 7.5 seconds long, so it doesn't have to be like anything crazy. But anyways, what I was going to say is I think she did something pretty powerful and effective with stock footage. And then my only critique at the moment was, hey, because you're using stock footage, some of these things feel like they need to be kind of visually glued together. So then I had her download a Prequel, the app, the sort of filter app. She ran it through a filter that applied some grain or something like that. But basically, I think if you just put some stock footage through a filter app, it kind of glues it together and it can make it feel sort of more arty and just more vibey for your song.
Yeah, and 7.5 seconds is not much time.
Yeah.
So it's hard to. I don't think artists need to overcomplicate it, but yeah, stock footage is great, and that's what a lot of the Rotor tool has is stock footage. They also have some like graphics and things that can just use your album art with graphics that make it look nice. But yeah, experiment with that stuff because it's easy to swap in and out. And there's part of me that doesn't like the canvas feature just because when you're driving and it's I've got my phone kind of attached to my dashboard, it can be kind of distracting. But I think it does help add story to the song, vibe and story to the song. And Spotify says it drives engagement. So until they say otherwise, it's worth doing.
Number 2 on the list is something we talked a little bit about in our AI episode, but it's basically getting ChatGPT to write a description of your music. And you made a kind of a helpful tips video about this. Do you want to explain what you did?
Yeah, I use ChatGPT to, if you haven't used ChatGPT yet or any AI tool, you don't want to use it like a search engine. I think that's how people's initial how they might initially try to use these tools, like tell me this, but or what is the answer to this? But what you need to do is you need to give it a persona to work with, and then some information to work from, based on that persona. So I said, act as a independent artist that does this type of music. And, I filled in a few more details and write a description, so many words. And then what it spit out was really great. And a lot of these, it's not necessarily that's the final product, but it really helps get outside of yourself to get the foundational work done for some of these things. Like I've used it for some grant submissions for artists. I've used it for press release type things and bios. And a lot of it that's helpful. Just that initial lift of getting some words on the paper. And oftentimes it does things that it helps you get outside of your creative box, I think. And it's funny because I don't know how many times, I mentioned that dive bar we were hanging out at the top of the show. How many times it was asked, what kind of music is it? And we're all just looking at each other like, we're doing the exact same thing I tell artists not to do. But it's hard. It's hard. But so ChatGPT can be very helpful in that.
Well, so it not only does it help you kind of maybe get out of your creative rut in describing yourself, but I think it can also, for artists who are maybe a little too, I don't know, music geeky about their own descriptions, like maybe they think they have to compare themselves to really cool artists in their genre, or like they use words that are more for like the music aficionado. ChatGPT can actually help you cut out all that and kind of make a way more straightforward description that will resonate with the most people. So, some people might be like, oh, that's like lowest common denominator. But if it's effective, it might actually be better for you to be direct. So I found it useful for that as well.
Yeah. And last thing I'll say about it, what I loved about it when I used it for a music description was that it did exactly what it leaned into the idea of what you and I have talked about in that our authentic artist branding boot camp that we do, where you tend to have an artist that's like a household name, and then an artist that's more specific to your genre that helps people connect the dots to where you sit in the whole musical spectrum. And it did that exact same thing in the most perfect way. I couldn't believe it. That's one thing that blew me away, because I didn't tell it to do that, and it did it.
It's smart. This is a total aside, but last night I had ChatGPT write me code, and it was great. It took 5 seconds for something fairly complicated. But anyways, on to our next hack. The third thing on the list is to make your content about someone else. And this is a bit of a more theoretical thing, but you could apply this to when you're making playlists, when you're promoting a gig that you might have someone else on the bill, or like thinking about what kind of TikTok content to make, like how can you make it with or about someone else. And I think this is really powerful because it takes some of the pressure off of you, the artist, to muster up the strength to self-promote, which sometimes we're not great at. So if you're reluctant to make a playlist that's all your own songs and then try to get the world to hear it, it might be a lot easier for you to say, here's a playlist of 20 songs where I've got 3 songs on the list, but then there's some of my other favorite artists, whatever, in this scene or in this genre, or it could even be mood or topic based. But suddenly all those qualms you might have about getting people to pay attention to it if it were only about you are kind of gone, and now you're supporting other people's work as well. So it can work for social content, work for the way you promote your gigs and tours, but just put the focus on someone else.
Yeah, and I think it's a good reminder, even just thinking about what's happening in any post you're making and opportunities. Like if you've listened to the podcast for a long time, you know that I've been a part of 2 band projects that I talk about, one Small Town Poets and another Hello Morning that was here in Portland. And just this past Saturday, hadn't seen him in a while. The lead singer of Hello Morning's like, hey, I'm in your town, downtown, hanging out in Camas, Washington. You want to meet up, or can you meet up? I'm like, yes. And I'm making you sing a song.
I noticed that.
I grabbed my guitar, my Traveler guitar. It's the brand name. It's like when I'm just want to take a guitar with me, whether on a trip where I'm not necessarily playing, but just want to have a guitar with me, or on a road trip. It's compact and it's durable. So I just grabbed that guitar, ran 5 blocks to downtown, and snagged him. We shot it in a little alley there. And I tagged Traveler, and they reposted the content. And so oftentimes it's easy to forget those things that sometimes can lead to being exposed to a bigger audience, stuff that was already in the video, just remembering that there's some tie-ins and other brands or other themes or topics that can be connected and give you a bigger reach.
Yeah. And that's just to sort of repeat what you just said with some emphasis. Part of the great thing about putting the spotlight on a different artist is about making it easy for you to promote. But then the other benefit is they're more likely to share that. So now you're getting twice the audience for, one bit of content.
And one way that you did this perfectly, Chris, was when you had that residency here in Portland, and you had a different artist performing with you every night, and the promotion wasn't all about you and then just a little side note of the artist. You had actually made it about the other artist, and so they were more willing to promote on your behalf.
Yeah, I made separate videos for every single gig where basically it was either their picture or their video, something like that. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, and so those are things that you can keep in mind that are opportunities to not always just be about me, but like think community, think connection, think all those things that might draw people in or be a reason for people to want to share what you're doing.
Yeah. So number 4 on our list of hacks is don't be afraid to resend a message to someone who didn't see it the first time. And this is something I mentioned briefly in our last episode about email mistakes. But, to some degree, it could apply to social as well. But I think as artists, we worry that we are bludgeoning our fans or our audience and that they're all sick of us because we just write them too much. But then think about your own social or email habits. You don't open every message. You don't see every bit of content someone else posts. And so the same is true of your audience. So first of all, you're probably not bugging them in the first place. They're there for you. So go ahead and use the data available to see who didn't see the message the first time around, and then go ahead and send that same email. Maybe you change the subject line, something like that. But yeah, just get over the fact that get over your fear that you're bugging your fans.
Yeah, that's something I do all the time with Small Town Poets when it comes to email and when we're active, especially like when we're doing some shows or have a release coming up. I'll send an email and then I'll see the people that didn't open it, and I will change the subject line and resend it to just those folks. And it's always surprising to me how many people the second time around open it that didn't see it the first time. So don't feel like there's a difference between people seeing your content and not liking it to the way that we interact with information, just drowning it out. That doesn't mean it was bad content. That doesn't mean there was something wrong with it. It's just, it's hard to cut through to everyone all the time. And, you know, the one thing that I've been telling multiple artists recently, they're like, well, I posted that on social media and nothing happened. I'm like, well, nothing happened means no one saw it. So who cares? Just delete it. Or
Right.
the only consideration in that situation is that certain platforms react differently, their algorithm, to similar content, or the same piece of content getting posted multiple times, because I think part of it is mainly they're trying to combat against spammers who just like post the same thing endlessly. But in reality, if nobody saw it, just because you see it sitting there on your, you know, your profile doesn't mean anyone else saw it.
Yeah.
And if it was good and it's just like the timing was wrong or something happened in the world that day that took everyone's attention away from or you know, away from what you might have been doing, try it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I always find it surprising, but ultimately encouraging how many responses and sales and clicks or whatever I get from the resend of the email. And this is more of like a gut feeling because I haven't looked at the numbers, but it almost feels like I get just as many or more on average for the resend. I don't know why that is, but it's always worth doing.
Yeah.
The last little tip I had was I was watching TikTok. I was scrolling through TikTok. What do you do on TikTok? You just let it bombard you with
You just let it take over your life is what it is.
I let it take over my life for about 20 minutes the other day. And I saw one of those videos made by what's the account called? I think There I Fixed It For You. Do you know that account?
I've heard of that one, yeah.
So they're hilarious. For anyone that doesn't know, they're pretty hilarious videos where the visual is just essentially like a Pro Tools or a DAW kind of layout screen of the audio. And there's one track that is one usually familiar song, like the backing tracks, maybe the instrumental stems. And then the other track you see is a vocal, and that's usually borrowed from a different song. So essentially you're watching a mashup being created, but the person who runs this account has usually auto-tuned or tweaked the vocals in some way to make very, like mashups usually kind of combine similar things that work together. And I feel like the fun of this account is that they take things that don't at all work and they just force it through sheer technology of auto-tuning and stuff and rhythm correction to make it fit. And it's hilarious. I thought, wait a minute, indie artists could do this. We could take our stems and borrow someone else's famous vocals, or vice versa, take our vocals, put it over a famous backing track. And I don't necessarily think it'll have it might not have the same impact that this person's content does because they've been doing it. They're really good at it. They've got a ton of sort of back catalog to watch. So the algorithm favors it in that way. They're also combining two famous things into one new fun thing. You might only be doing one famous thing with your own original stuff. But for your existing audience, I think they will absolutely love it. And depending on how well it's done, it could get a lot of reach. And then best of all, it's like in the caption or the comments, rather, you could say, here's this Dropbox folder with my stems. So go make your own stuff with my music. And then maybe, potentially get some remixes or duets going in that way.
Yeah. And there's, speaking of AI, there's some new AI platforms. If you haven't had stems made from your music or you're not quite sure what we mean when we say stems. That's like having the bass track, maybe the drums in a stereo track, the guitars in a stereo track, and then like the vocals separated. And, it can be a little time consuming in the studio if you're using, you're getting down to the wire, and then to have the engineer go and mute everything and burn everything down could take some time. But there are several new AI platforms that it blows my mind how they do it, but they'll create stems from your complete stereo
From a
mix.
mastered audio.
Yeah, I don't know how they cut everything out because it's all blended. I don't understand.
No, I
I
don't
never
get it
will.
either.
But I've tried it and it works. It's not going to be as clean as what you get from doing it in the studio. But if you haven't done that and it's just some fan engagement thing, those platforms are great for doing that.
Well, someone heard me say that and it's like, that's not a hack. That would take me forever. You don't have to do it for the entire song. This person's TikTok account usually is, 10 to 30 seconds. So usually it's just the hook, the chorus, whatever, or, the kind of most catchy part of the song. So you could really just do it for 10 seconds of your tune and call it a day.
Well, and based on what you just said, here's my final hack before we jump into the Spotify thing that wasn't on the list. Stop thinking about the whole song when it comes to promoting your music.
Yeah.
You don't need a whole song. Think about the hook. Think about chunks of things, because even one song you can make an enormous amount of content around if you think about breaking it down to smaller and smaller bite-sized pieces, and stop thinking about the whole song. Or, it could even just be a cool beat. Like if your song has a very recognizable guitar hook or beat that comes in at the beginning, just do something with that and tell your fans to do something on top of it. Or, we talked about Walk Off the Earth. They did an open verse challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that song that we talked, about, called My Stupid Heart, where they did all these videos. And I realized when they posted that, they'd never even posted the verses of the song yet. So it was really like the fans just interpreting whatever they thought it might be. So,
which is really cool that like before anyone actually heard the quote real verses, their fans got to invent their own. Like,
yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah. All right. Well, there was some quick marketing hacks for you that we just wanted to get out there. We didn't think that was a full episode on its own. And so a little appetizer, and before the main course talking about Spotify and all their new features that they've announced. You might have heard about it. We've posted on the blog. I know I made some videos about it on my personal Instagram and TikTok. But yeah, some pretty great features. So how do you want to start diving into this, Chris?
Well, let me first say, we're going to talk through 5 kind of new additions to Spotify. These are all like basically, how do I say this? They're working with us to enable them for our artists. That being said, Spotify isn't turning them on for, millions and millions of artists all at once. So how it's working for most labels, distributors, and for us is there's sort of going in phases. So I just say that to mean if you go into your Spotify for artists and any of these aren't visible to you yet, they will be. Just be patient.
Yeah, I would add to that, if you saw the news stories or the press releases around it, CD Baby was listed as one of the distributors that is a part of the program from the launch, all these new features. But like Chris just said, that doesn't mean that everybody got it all at once, because they turn it on in phases just to make sure that they work out the bugs, because it is technically still beta. And in fact, where you will find a lot of these features that we're going to be talking about is in your Spotify for Artist account. And there is a new campaign tab, and it says beta on it. And so far, I've seen every artist that I've talked to has that link, that tab in their account. But when they click on it, they may find something different based on whether or not some of these features have been unlocked for their account.
Yeah. Well, should we just go one at a time through them?
Yeah, let's go through them. Yeah.
So there's the first one is something called Clips. And basically Clips are Spotify's vertical video feature. Think TikTok and Instagram Reels. And unlike TikTok, these are meant to put the spotlight on the music and its creators kind of solely. So Spotify's official description is video and music go hand in hand, but on social media, music often gets cut short and pushed to the background. That's why we built Clips, to give artists a platform that inspires fandom and long-term success, not quick hits tied to the latest meme. Clips are short, under 30 seconds. They're vertical videos that allow you to express your artistry and invite fans into your creative process, all while keeping your music front and center.
So yeah, the idea behind this is evergreen content, meaning it's something that can sit next to your artist account and be relevant for a longer period of time. I have not seen this out in the wild yet. So I know this feature is still only been rolled out to a small number of artists, but I haven't seen it out in the wild yet. So I don't know how it truly sits in the interface for fans to interact with, or how the interface looks on the Spotify for artist side. But it is intended to be content that isn't just like, hey, we're walking into the show today type of thing. It's meant to be like the story behind the song, or maybe recording and things related to that album or release. So yeah.
And I suppose it's an obvious framework, but I do like that they're kind of explicitly saying, hey, this isn't the place for the latest trend or meme or wacky thing. It's like, keep it, essentially they're saying keep it curated to your music catalog, because on Spotify, that's what's there, your music catalog. So they don't want to be an outright kind of social media platform.
Yeah. And I don't know if there's limits, like you can have 5 at once or 3 or 20. I don't know. Haven't seen it yet, but it is, I think, an interesting development, because it was probably like in 2017, or it was a while ago, where Spotify said that video was going to be important to the platform. And really the only thing that they had done since then was Canvas. But I think it was around the time when they started really promoting podcasts that they were going to, they also mentioned that they were going to start having more video content, but hadn't really materialized like I thought.
Yeah. And one thing I'll add to, for anyone who isn't seeing these particular tools or features in their Spotify for Artists, you can go on our blog, the DIY Musician blog, and there's an article where for each of these items, I've embedded Spotify's video that kind of gives a preview. And a lot of times it's, like Ed Sheeran or something, people who they have enabled these things for, but you can at least get an idea of sort of what's coming for you. So then number 2 is something really interesting. It's called countdown pages. And these are meant to build anticipation for your music and highlight Spotify's native pre-save feature. And so their official explanation for this is, there's always been a disconnect between where music is teased and where it's streamed until now. With countdown pages, your fans can pre-save your upcoming release, preview the track list, pre-order new merch, watch video clips you share with them, and watch the timer count down to the release moment, all in one place. Then they list a bunch of famous artists who have already tested countdown pages, and the results have been stunning. On average, more than 80% of pre-savers have streamed the new release within the first week.
Yeah, that stat is probably questionable, because if Taylor Swift is one of their, the main people they've been testing this with, that's going to be a different scenario than average artists. Plus, I don't know that the countdown page should be credited outright with 80% of pre-savers streaming it, because those people probably would have streamed it anyway. However, it is a nice tool. It simplifies the pre-save process. I'm curious to see if this makes the pre-save process more useful for artists. I've sort of been off the pre-save bandwagon for a while, because I'm like, for a fan, there's really nothing for me for doing it. It's really more about helping the artist out. It's like, I'm not concerned that I need to reserve a copy of my streams on release day. But this countdown framework, depending on how it's deployed on the platform, it could be interesting if you open up your Spotify app, and then it's like has several different countdowns for releases that you've pre-saved as a reminder that they're coming up. That could be helpful.
Yeah, well, the thing I think will be interesting to see is up until this point, every pre-save tool that's been available, including Show.co and Foundy and every other one that exists, has been basically saving that data and then on the release day going and sort of auto forcing a save on behalf of all those users, those listeners. So what it was a day of release mass pre-save on behalf of these people who haven't gone and listened to it yet. So then potentially there's this sort of strange data mismatch of a bunch of people who've saved the song without hearing it. And then Spotify could be like, interesting. How do we value that? Because we'd prefer, I assume, that someone hear the song first and then save it, or hear it and listen again, or add it to a playlist after hearing it, because that's like a 100% pretty much metric of enjoyment, whereas the pre-save wasn't so clearly a suggestion of merit, I guess. Whereas this one, I guess it still doesn't necessarily suggest the person loves the song because they haven't heard it, but it at least is managed on Spotify. So I kind of feel like with most new features, they might sort of give it a boost in preference or priority.
Yeah, and the one thing that I couldn't find any information on is if you got a bunch of fans pre-saving something like an indie artist, if that data somehow brings attention to the editors before release day, where before, like what you were saying, it really was like this, it really was a hack to make this function happen. And so Spotify had no data before release day about any of these pre-saves. It was just all on day one, all these accounts would save a track or an
unless
album.
you did the pre-save so far in advance that in your pitch you could say, hey, we got 10,000 people pre-saving to the editors.
Yeah,
but they still wouldn't see it.
Yeah, now they should have access to that data. I know that I think it was this feature that this natively built in yet. There was one of them where they said that the stats would be, you could ask for manually on a week by week basis. I'm pretty sure it was this one. So,
it was. It was basically sort of like working on it, but you're not going to see it instantaneously the way you might on the, on like the day of release, how the mobile app gives you kind of a better glimpse. I don't think you get quite that same responsiveness with this one yet.
Not yet. So it felt like that they probably had all these features in the works that were in different stages of development, but all coming out soon. And so some were more fully featured and built out than others. And that's probably partly why they're rolling them out in smaller chunks across the platform.
Yeah. Well, so the next one is called Discovery Mode. And this is something that it's not brand new. Like, it's been available to labels and distributors to kind of request. How would you say that? Like, well, actually, let me read the Spotify's official description first. Discovery Mode allows Spotify to prioritize your music for discovery. And then they say, with Discovery Mode, artists and labels identify songs that are a priority for them, and our system will add that signal to the algorithms that determine personalized listening sessions. This signal increases the likelihood of the selected songs being recommended, but does not guarantee it. But it only works if fans love it too. We take note when a listener isn't engaging with a song, including those in Discovery Mode, and factor this in when determining what to recommend next. It's all about harmony. So now what they don't tell you is essentially this is for newish songs, I think, that are more than 30 days old. So it's not brand new. It's got some engagement going on. It has to have a certain minimum amount of streams, I believe. And if you want them to boost it on Spotify Radio, you kind of check a box and submit the song for this program, which means that they're going to reduce your royalty cut, or whatever you'd say, your revenue for that particular stream. It's sort of like a fee for them boosting it for their recommendation engine. But then they say, hey, if it's not performing, we're not going to force people to hear it just because you want them to. It still needs to be enjoyable to listeners. So I find this one really interesting. And like I said, it's always been available, not always, but for a while been available to CD Baby to request on behalf of select artists. But this is essentially making it available to everyone.
Yeah, this was the feature I was most excited about, and the feature that I was probably most disappointed in with its execution about what they say it is and what it actually is. Because first up, the idea, it's always been a frustration for me that with the way Spotify works, if you happen to get some songs and playlists, that it's really hard to outrun those with your new music. So for example, Small Town Poets, we have 100 tracks, over 100 tracks available on streaming platforms. Our radio hits from our label days are always going to be at the top. And it drives me nuts because as much as I appreciate those albums, I want people to land on our profile and see the new stuff. Yes, I can do the featured track, but honestly, I don't think the way that the featured release thing that's only there for 30 days really drives much engagement. Just the way it sits in the on the interface, I don't think it's is obvious because people instinctively look at that list of like top 5 songs, you know. And so trying to break into that top 5 songs can be really hard if you've got some songs that are in some high performing playlists, even if they're old back catalog. So my thought was, oh, you can log in and select anything in your catalog and Spotify will test that song. That's not how it works. First off, you may have access to discovery mode. You click that campaign tab and it'll say Marquee and it'll say discovery mode. When you click on discovery mode, it'll give you information, but it might say the feature's not available for you yet. A couple things could be going on. One, it could be that they haven't rolled it out to your account yet. Or two, there are some qualifications that you have to hit that aren't said in the marketing around this feature. And it's like you mentioned tracks that have a certain amount of streams or activity. And I think there's a average monthly listener number that you are supposed to hit. So I haven't found anything definitive yet, but
I think it might actually be on their site because I remember seeing some of those numbers, but I didn't commit them to memory. It just basically seemed like the type of thing, to sum it up, like if you're eligible, you'll see it in your account. And if not, then you're not.
Yeah. And I remember when we were on a call with Spotify, I asked, and what they said would mean that my account shouldn't have it. And my band has access to it. So another thing to note is these are monthly campaigns. So it's not like you can go set it up anytime. Like when I saw it in my account, it said, this feature will be unlocked for you March 11th. And then it was unlocked where I could select a couple songs and it would go into effect for April. So starting April 1st, in fact, I just had our account open and it said I had 4 hours left to make any changes. Huh. So then I guess assuming it'll try these songs for April. So I mentioned we have 100 songs. It had one that it highlighted and said, this one's eligible. And then it said, here's 3 other songs. Click on this link that you could also qualify. It did not allow me to select any song. And some of the songs that have been high performers for us off newer releases were not available. And so that was a little frustrating. The one that it really wanted to feature is not one that I would have picked at all. And so one of the ones that was in the sub menu of like, here's the 3 others, was one that I would pick. So we'll see how it performs. I thought it would allow you to pick anything, but that's not the case.
Yeah, it hasn't shown up for me yet, but I also haven't released anything in, I don't know, maybe 11 months or something like that. And that most recent of the single that I put out is doing very well in Spotify radio. So for all I know, it either may be too old or they're thinking you're already available in our sort of algorithmic recommendation stuff because you're doing well on Spotify radio. So you don't need to opt in because that same song is already there.
Well, and my main question from this point is opting into this additive, like the activity that's been happening already is great. This will, since you're taking a reduced royalty rate, this will expand your reach. is it expanding or is it just going to
Replace it.
replace it? Yeah, we got a sucker here. He opted in the track for less royalty, so we'll swap it. So that's why I'm curious. I won't know until another week or two when I can start seeing real data and see what's happening. But it didn't work exactly like I thought it would. Still thankful that they're allowing these features, but it's a little different than how it just sounds in execution.
Yeah, I mean, and then we could probably have a whole discussion about, just the kind of the money around it. I'm sure people have all sides of the debate around whether this feature should exist, kind of thing. For me, I have no qualms with it. Like at my level, I'd rather people hear my music than not. And so, because essentially I'm not making a living from my music on streaming anyways, like when I do make money, it's generally from either playing live or selling merch or things like that. So if this gets more people into the awareness phase of me existing, then cool. Like I'd rather get the reach.
Yeah. And from what I've been hearing, when I was down at South by Southwest, that was right after this announcement, the major labels are like refusing to use this, according to what I've been hearing, because for them, it's like, why should we take a reduced royalty rate for the music that people already want? Because our music's better than indie music. And then indie artists are the ones that are more interested in this feature. And the major labels are also not happy about that because it could dilute their market share.
Yeah. Oh, delight. Oh, major labels, don't worry. You own 100 years worth of all the music everyone loves, so you'll be fine.
Yeah. And they always find a way to buy themselves out of any jam anyway.
Right. Well, let's see. Speaking of discovery tools, the number 4 on our list is Marquee and Showcase. Marquee has been around for a bit, but with the addition of Showcase, you now have the options to amplify both your newest tracks and your back catalog. So if you've seen Marquee, actually this may have, appeared in your Spotify for Artists dashboard prior to these new changes. It's just that little visual kind of banner that pops up and says like, hey, Kevin's got a new song out. You want to hear it? Click now. So for Marquee, it was used for new releases. Showcase is kind of almost the same thing, but you can do it for back catalog tracks, which is cool. And similar to Discovery Mode, these things are going to be widely rolled out to everyone.
Yeah, that really is the same tool. I don't know, from the previews that I saw, it looks like the same. I don't know if Showcase shows up in different places in the app, but Marquee, everyone's probably seen it. It's like you open up the app and instead of going to the homepage of your Spotify as a fan, as a music listener, instead of going to like the homepage of the app, it goes to this thing that pops up and says somebody that you like or a band that they think you'd like based on your listening has a new album. Click here. I did this for one of our, I think our last release when we had a Christmas track, and the minimum when I did it was $250. I know that since then it was lowered to $125. So I'm assuming that's still the base. I felt like for the money, it actually performed really well. So the main difference between Marquee and Showcase is like Marquee was only available for a release that was brand new within the first 30 days. After that, you couldn't use it. So now Showcase is just a different variation that allows you to select back catalog tracks and feature them. I have not done it yet, so it may be similar to Discovery Mode where it doesn't just let you choose anything. It might only let you choose certain back catalog pieces.
So I've actually never run a Marquee. I'm curious, how does the data show up for you in terms of reports? Like you could very clearly see which streams were driven by Marquee.
Oh yeah, I've got it. I just popped it up right here. Yeah, like it gives you a lot of information similar to like if you bought advertising on Facebook or things like that. Like it tells me reach. It says 2,387 people saw the campaign. It got 337 clicks. 286 people streamed it. It had 11.77% conversion rate, which seemed pretty good to me. Streams per listener, intent rate of 20%, playlist ads of 18%, saves of 6.29%. So yeah,
Cool. I was just making sure that you could see, for those who click on it, how many end up going all the way to streaming it.
yeah, it actually has quite a bit of data. That was one thing I was impressed by with this feature. It gave me more information than I expected it to, and it looked like it only spent through $161 out of the 250 budget. I think I'm not sure why it didn't spend more. That's one thing that it doesn't give you that kind of details. Like, if you use Facebook ads, it'll say, if you make these changes, you could reach more people, or some like ad platforms will do that. So it didn't give me any information like that. So I don't know why it didn't spend through the whole budget.
Interesting. So there's a fifth update, which has to do with the user experience. But before we do that, I just want to remind people of some of the other things you can do through Spotify for Artists. Obviously, you can pin tracks or playlists. You can pin your concert dates if you've listed them in Songkick, so you can sell tickets. Obviously, you can pitch songs through Spotify for Artists. You can update your bio whenever you want. You can list merch if you have a Shopify store. So, those are just some of the things you could do over the past couple years, and now you can do a lot more. But the last change is they have launched an AI DJ, which I actually kind of like. I've been using it, and they have revamped their sort of homepage recommendation feed, and you might notice that there are canvases all over the place. So they have really prioritized those visual vertical looping videos in how they show music they're recommending. So more on the listener side of things, but reiterates why you need canvases for all your songs.
Yeah, I've been using that DJ feature too, and I really like it. It is an AI. It's a voice that comes on. I don't know if you can change the voice, but what I like is, and when I used it, I realized one thing that I missed about radio, like traditional radio. I missed the DJ when they weren't just blabbing about nonsense, it wasn't commercials all the time, or the same song over and over again. But when they said something interesting about the song, or like, this band's on tour right now, or this was recorded here, or this band's from there, or so it gives you kind of that context that I feel like's been missing from the listening experience, that helps break it up. So it's just not like endless songs playing. That's like some, I think, nuggets of information that help you get more interest, make you more interested in the music. So it's not perfect because, well, partly my youngest daughter just turned 13, so I can get her own Spotify account now, because she really jacks up my algorithm.
Yeah,
So
I got the same problem.
it's like, here's the songs you've been listening to on repeat. And it's like, no, I have not. This is really, but it'll go to like different eras, different genres based on your listening habits. And then the one thing I did like, it is like, you like rock music, so here's some rock tracks that are really burning up now that you haven't listened to before. And it gives context and nuggets of information. I think it's cool. But my conspiracy theory is they want everybody using this because these are radio tracks that get less royalties.
There it is.
So I'm like, dang it, I'm falling for it again.
There it is. I like it. I've been using it, and I was thinking,
I have too.
You really pinpointed why I like it, because I miss that same thing about old radio, where the DJ would tell you about how the song was written, or whatever, like random little factoids they knew or were interested in about the music. They were free to share with you. And now I think you can get that on like on Sirius XM.
Yeah.
It's different personalities will have their radio hour or whatever, or they'll tell you why they're moved by things. But then that's another monthly fee, and I don't have Sirius XM. I only listen to it when I'm borrowing my mom's car.
That's the same here. Why do old people have that?
That's the most pressing question listeners can weigh in on.
But
it brings it to a platform I'm already subscribed to, basically. Yes, I would prefer if it was more individualized, and I heard whatever Tom Petty making his recommendations, and then whoever else making their recommendations. But
Yeah, you can't guide it. So I'm sure this is just a first version. I would like to be able to say, just stick in this area or only go find me something that's new. Because honestly, this is a question I've had been for a while now. It's like, how do people discover new music anymore? Because I feel like on all these platforms, the algorithm learns what you like and then you just can't get out of it. And it like just gives you, it's like just giving you your favorite meal over and over again. It's like my favorite meal is my favorite meal and I enjoy it the most when I've had a break from it for a while and I can come back to it, not when that's the only thing I eat, So that's where I wish I could guide it a little bit more but I like the feature. I think it's the most interesting fan feature I've seen in a long time.
I didn't realize you couldn't guide it. You can a little bit, right? Or does it not have any?
You just hit the button and it goes. You can skip tracks but it'll keep bouncing around. I haven't seen anything where I can say, do this or that.
Let's see. Yeah, it's generative. Yeah, I guess so. So you're just interacting with it almost the same way as Pandora radio work. It's like a skip, essentially, instructing it.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's supposed to be, I think, a radio feature. It's probably considered a non-interactive stream.
Yeah. Oh, you know what I was thinking of, though? It's like there's a button you can hit where you can swap to a different artist or genre or something like that. So like it's not as simple as like it's not as limited as just skip this. Like you can instruct it to sort of take you to a different realm of Spotify.
I'll have to mess with it more. But I like the feature. I think it's helpful, and on the positive side, I think what it does do is help potentially solve for that discovery problem that that's so hard. And also, as Spotify ages and all these platform ages, those songs that have been in like the early songs that got into big playlists, it's hard for even new releases by major artists sometimes to outrun those tracks.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an issue that's going to be on the fan discovery side that these platforms need to solve for. Like, how do you balance that out where things that have been on the platform longer are obviously going to have more streams, and especially by big artists, they're still going to have a lot of new activity around old tracks, and maybe more so than even some of the mega artists with their new tracks. Like, I'd be curious. For some reason, Metallica just came to mind because they've got a new release, and but they also had Master of the Puppets in Stranger Things, and the Black Album is always going to be at the top of the list. And so how do they break through with their new tracks? So
there's a name for that habit of like sort of gets applied to monopolies a lot. It's like the more power you have, the more power you have. You just keep accruing. Forgetting what it's called. Anyways.
I'm sure there's a term.
Yeah. Well, just to do one more plug, as we were talking about the user experience and canvases being featured a lot more, be on the lookout for an awesome deal from CD Baby that lets you make a bunch of videos with Rotor for super affordable rate.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into the first thing we were talking about, like some marketing hacks. Whenever you see a platform like Spotify or YouTube, I'm going to mention something about that in a second. Whenever you see them adding a new feature, you should automatically assume that leaning into that feature is going to do better for you on that platform. So if Spotify is really promoting Canvas, and you said on the homepage, Chris, you saw like there was tons of canvases, that means that they're going to feature tracks that have canvases. So if you don't have one, that may impact you negatively or not give you a boost in certain ways. And so that's something to keep in mind with social platforms, with streaming platforms. When they launch new features, you should see how you can use them if you have access to them. And if you do, to, to experiment with them, because chances are that's going to help your music out.
Yeah. What were you going to say about YouTube?
Well, we got some listener emails coming up, but before we do, I got an email from YouTube Music today. Not a personal email. It was just one that, they send out. Leor Cohen, who is the head of YouTube Music. It's just his little newsletter. And it was about YouTube Shorts. And it said, did Shorts just double your audience? I have news for you. Fans on Shorts are your new digital street team. In January 2023, fan-created Shorts increased the average artist audience of unique viewers by more than 80%. This means fans on Shorts are nearly doubling an artist's total reach, so artists can spend more time doing what they do best, making great music. So I've been, watching a lot of YouTube videos. I really, when the pandemic hit, for some reason, I started using YouTube a lot. I hadn't really used YouTube on a daily basis. And now I subscribe to a bunch of channels and watch all sorts of videos, usually a few times a day. And I've seen YouTubers complain about the Shorts feature because they're like, if you're not using Shorts, your videos are not seen as much. But, apparently if fans are using Shorts, it's really helping your reach. But, you got to have fans that are actively engaging with content around your music and posting stuff in order for that to be true. But just a little interesting tidbit there.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the YouTuber who makes 15-minute videos and doesn't want to have to be active on Shorts, it's like it's easy enough to just clip out 20 seconds of your intro and tease people and then get them to click from the Shorts to the full video.
Yeah, I think part of the frustration is it's a different format because YouTube is horizontal and these are vertical videos.
Yeah.
So depending on what your show is like, like for us, this show, you and I on the screen show up side by side. So you have to do some finagling to get a vertical video to work. And it really is a completely different format compared to what the rest of YouTube is designed to be.
Yeah.
So it's not like how Instagram did Reels and has done all sorts of variations of video. And this just happens to be vertical instead of square. It really is a completely different format. So anyway, worth investigating. If you've got a lot of fans on YouTube, that's something that might be worth checking out. All right. So we've got some listener emails. And if you've got any thoughts, comments about what we covered today, if you've got questions about Spotify's new features, if you have access to them, I'd love to hear if you have access to them and you're using them and what you think of them. You can email us at podcast@cdbabypodcast.com, or you can call our listener line at 360-524-2209. And let's get to the emails. And this one goes right along with the topic of this episode. Hi, guys. It's Elijah. Remember, you answered my question about whether pre-saves are reviewed by editorial team. Just saw the news in Billboard that Spotify is launching pre-saves. So what do you think? Should I gather Spotify pre-saves first and then pitch to the editorial team? And in general, do you think it's a huge deal? So we talked about this a little bit. We don't know if it will impact a release's opportunity with the editorial team. We don't know if they're going to be looking at that data or have access to it yet. But, we'll see. We'll see.
So this might just be applying marketing, sort of time-tested marketing wisdom in the wrong way. But I think my thinking on pre-saves is like, okay, you're going to have to get someone's attention and interest them. Then you have to get them to click a button to do something, right? So that's two difficult things right there. Or three. You got their attention, you interested them, you got them to take an action, right?
Yeah.
Now what do they get for that? Oh, they get to wait. So then they wait, and now what do? Now they have to notice something else. They have to notice either a message Spotify sends them, or they have to go in Release Radar and actually listen to Release Radar. And maybe your song's actually not first on Release Radar because that person also pre-saved something else, or they like another band better, more than you. So maybe for all that, they might hear your song. as opposed to simply waiting and doing the same first three things, get their attention, interest them, get them to click the button, and oh, your song's available. So they hear the song right away. And so like it just shrinks everything down. It makes it seem like a more simple, compact journey. Which is my long-winded way of saying I still kind of feel like it's probably better to just wait till the song's out than market the hell out of it.
Yeah, we did that episode about building anticipation for your music. And so to me, that should still always be your goal. You're building anticipation, not trying to get them to do some mechanical function that requires all that you just said. It's like if that works for your fans, and also a key reminder that not all your fans are listening on Spotify. So
right.
If you focus solely on Spotify, you could be alienating a lot of your fans. So, that's one thing with my band. Apple Music and Amazon Music kind of battle it out for the number 2 streaming platform for where people listen to our stuff. So if all I do is talk about Spotify and pre-save on Spotify and this or that, those folks are like, tell me when it's out because I'm not using Spotify. So that's one thing that I'm still curious about. And like you said, you're asking them to do a lot that's still about you and not getting them excited for the release. Now, granted, if you're a megastar and, because I used Taylor Swift in the example, when she tells her fans, it doesn't matter what she says, a large segment of them will go take action just because they love her that much. That's not going to be the case for, a lot of artists. So we'll see. I'm curious. And no information of whether or not that it helps impact the editorial team. And we talked about that earlier in the episode. All right, we've got another email. Hi guys, thanks for your podcast. At the end of episode 318, someone was asking how to promote their upcoming EP if they have some money. What are your thoughts on using PR services, assuming one can find a good PR firm? Thanks, from Planet 3.
I have probably some long rambling thoughts.
Go for it.
Well, so first, like, what's your goal? Where are you at currently in your career? And what door do you need to open? If you're just kind of building an audience and you want to make real fans sort of more at the start of things, I might say don't spend that money on PR. Because even if you're successful and get a bunch of reviews, there'll be reviews that most people don't read because no one reads anything anymore. Music blogs have less influence and power and matter less. And success in PR is like, it's sort of tough to measure to begin with. And then it's also, I don't know, hard to achieve because the amount of blogs or the amount of opportunities for PR are shrinking. With the same amount of publicists, scraping for tinier portions of attention. So that's my cynical take. Now, I have done PR for, I think, every one of my albums or most of my albums over the past 15 years. And I'm always thankful I do it. So whatever that means. But I think depending on your goals, if you have limited budget, you might be better off spending it on something else. And, social ads or throwing some really cool experience. I don't know what it could be, but that's my suspicious take.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. What's your goal? And the number one place where you're going to get the biggest return on your money is probably something like Facebook ads. They're cheap and you can reach a lot of people. And if you do it right, it can be very impactful. But PR, yeah, you can burn a lot of money quickly. And I think the biggest thing when I talk to an artist and they have that question, not just about PR, but anything, is I feel like they oftentimes go into it thinking, I'm going to spend $500 on this activity or $1,500 or $2,000, because a good publicist is probably going to be minimum of $1,000 for your campaign, maybe $1,500 or $2,000. Depending on the scope
or more, right?
Or more. Yeah. Or like $5,000 or more. And I think they've been getting more and more expensive because of what Chris mentioned, the shrinking realm of music magazines and blogs and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, oftentimes I feel like they think, oh, I'm going to spend $2,000 and get $2,000 in return. But that's not necessarily how it works. Because and maybe you're what you need in your career right now is just some social proof, meaning like it's helpful if you've got a publication that's known, that's done a write-up about you, that maybe gets club bookers more willing to open your email or more willing to give you a shot because, hey, the LA Times wrote something about you, or the big paper in your part of the world wrote something about you. That might be helpful, but it's not just going to translate into streams necessarily. It's really about building a story and building interest and sort of a resume, really.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, when I say I'm always thankful that I've done it, it's like press quotes are great. They like open doors at venues that might not otherwise take you seriously. You know, it definitely comes with a lot of benefits. But I feel like the thing that usually goes unmentioned about PR for music, especially at the indie level, is like getting on Pitchfork and NPR and whatever, you know, major publications is unlikely. And those are also the only places where you're probably guaranteed to have readers who will just read this story or check out this music because it's the publication. So with most of the placements that you'd get or blog features or whatever at kind of the indie level, their publications that start off not having a ton of readers to begin with. And so they're not going to necessarily see your article unless you drive your audience to see it, which you should do because the writer has been nice enough to favorably cover and favorably write about your music, which is great. But then there's that weird thing of like, wait a minute, why did I need that article to then go send my precious audience with their precious few minutes to some other website just so they could read what I could have told them so that they can see someone else likes my music so they don't feel stupid liking me. Like it's all I mean, essentially it's kind of a waste of time. And I hate to say it like that. It's not, but that's my like cynical take, because you could have sent the same email and said, hey, I did this cool thing. Come to my website, check it out. And maybe you'll buy a CD at the end of it. Like, as opposed to, hey, go check out this random blog and read their article because I'm indebted to do that because they wrote about me. And that's, again, that's like the very sort of cynical take on it, but something to be aware of because you're going to have to marshal your audience to even make it matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And also I would add, last thing I'd say about this, it's very genre dependent on what my answer might be to an artist and what the opportunity might be. There are some genres that still have more music press and it might be more impactful than others. If you are in the pop rock realm, you're probably not going to get much results. This is where a niche audience is actually more beneficial to you because those publications still seem to be thriving a little bit more and have opportunity that, you know, those fans get excited about discovering a new artist.
Publicists and bloggers are going to hate me after this episode, but it just occurred to me, you know, I used to try to get premieres for my new music videos and they were cool. Like it felt nice to have that attention. But when I think about it now, I'm like, wait a minute. It's sort of the same problem I mentioned earlier. I have to get your attention. I have to make you know that I have a video that you can't see yet until you click a button to go to a website you don't know and don't care about necessarily, to then scroll down a page past some text the way you'd scroll past whatever was written on a recipe website to finally get to the video, which is a YouTube embed, which you have to click play and then maybe sit through an ad potentially, and then eventually see the damn video. I could have just taken whatever I paid the publicist and got literally 1 million people to watch the video instantaneously on the app that they're already on, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Like, what was that premiere except a giant waste of money and distraction?
It was to say that Pitchfork premiered it.
Right. Well, if Pitchfork premiered it, and that may discount what I just said, but It was just,
come
average
on.
indie blog. that no one-
Pitchfork's just going to write a snarky review and hate it anyway.
Yeah, right. That's true.
So yeah.
Sorry to anyone who really loves premieres.
I haven't seen people doing that much in a while. So, well, those are our emails. Thanks for those emails. If you would like to ask us a question or weigh in on some topic, whether it's Spotify's new features or Publicist, you can do so. You can call our listener line at 360-524-2209, or you can email us at podcast@cdbabypodcast.com.
Yeah, let's hear from all the angry publicists now. Why am I wrong? I'm sure I'm wrong. Right? Tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah, there you go. Tell them. Let's hear it. All right. Well, I made it without falling over, Chris.
Yeah, you need a nap now.
Well, I took quite a bit of caffeine before I started this, so I'll probably just be like staring at the ceiling, trying to sleep, but unable to sleep. But yes, it's all for the cause, though. You got to suffer for the art.
Yeah, that's how you know it's good.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode, and we'll catch you next time.